Hello, this is Ariadne Rainbird, and today I'm talking about Liber, Libera and the Liberalia festival. Liber, also known as Liber Pater or Liber Pater, the Free Father, is a Roman god of wine and of winemaking, viticulture, and of male fertility and freedom. He was also a patron deity of Rome's plebeians and was part of the Aventine triad of gods. The festival of Liberalia was celebrated on the 17th of March and was associated with free speech and the rights that came with the coming of age of young men. Liber shared many characteristics with the Greek god of wine, Dionysos, also known as Bacchus, which was Latinised to Bacchus, and became identified with him as the cult of Bacchus spread in Rome. The late Republican writer Cicero was opposed to the cult of Dionysos, which he saw as too licentious and un-Roman, a foreign cult, and therefore insisted that Dionysos and Liber, though both referred to as Bacchus by the Romans, were not the same god. And he described Liber and Libera as the children of Ceres, whereas Dionysos is the son of Semele. However, due to the similarity of the two gods, Liber became increasingly associated with Dionysos or Bacchus, and shared his iconography and began to absorb his mythology. Cicero described three Libers with different functions and attributes, expressing different aspects of freedom. The first was associated with a libertas or political freedom. The second was associated with personal freedom, and Liber was the god who freed people from fear and cares. His third function was as the god who frees the soul from the constraints of the mortal body. This is also reflected in his role as god of male fertility, who releases the semen from the male body in orgasm in order to create life. Cicero used the name Liber when discussing the positive and civilising aspects of the Roman god and his festival and his associated cult. But he used the name Bacchus for what he saw as the more negative and licentious aspects of the cult of the god of wine, which included drunkenness and revelry, which he saw as being un-Roman and uncivilised. He used the name Dionysos when discussing the Greek god and his Greek origins. So Cicero distinguished between Dionysos and Liber, though the name Bacchus was used for both. St. Augustine, quoting the Roman writer Varro, described Liber as being a god of the seeds of men and representing male sexuality, and as a god of fecundity, of agriculture, of viticulture, cattle breeding, and as the personification of freedom. The name Liber itself means free, and it originates from Proto-Italic leifro and the Proto-Indo-European word cledero, words meaning belonging to the people. In Latin, Liber means free or the free one. The word Liber is also etymologically linked to the word libation, a ritual offering of drink. Liber was generally depicted as a youthful male figure crowned with and carrying a thyrsus, that's a stem of narthex or fennel, or giant fennel, topped by a pine cone, which was likely borrowed from the cults of Dionysos, and the cults of Dionysos and Liber were merged together. Vines and grapes were also important in Liber's iconography as the god of wine, and Liber was accompanied by an entourage of revellers, satyrs, fauns, maenads and beasts, known in Greek as a theassos, who were said to hold nocturnal rites. Liber had a number of epithets in literature, on statues and on votive dedications to him, most of which were borrowed from the Greek god Dionysos. But he is mostly referred to as Liber or Liber Pater. He was also called Bacchus, from ancient Greek Vakos, an epithet of Dionysos, which refers to the frenzied, ecstatic state associated with the cult. Bacchus could also be related to the Latin word bacca, meaning a berry or the fruit of a tree or shrub, and therefore refer to the grapes. Bromios, meaning loud roaring, was another epithet of Dionysos which Liber took on, and Lieos and Lieos, he who releases from care and anxiety, were also epithets of Dionysos borrowed by Liber. Nictilius, meaning the night sun, and Linnaeus, the setter of the wine, were also used for Liber. And then we also have some Latin titles, such as Genialis Concitor Uva, God of all those who plant the luscious grape. Ovid, in his Metamorphosis, gives several epithets of Greek and Italic origin. Due to the fact that several older cults helped shape the cult of Liber Pater, epithets from Greek, Etruscan, Samnite, etc. cults entered Roman cult use. In early Roman religion, the Italic goddess Libera was partnered with Liber, though we know little about her other than that she was Liber's female equivalent. She first became part of Roman religion, it seems, as part of the Aventine Triad, alongside Ceres and Liber, which was established around 493 BCE, soon after the overthrow of the Roman monarchy and the establishment of the Republic. Livy, writing at the end of the Republic, tells us that the dictator Postumius promised games, or ludi, and a joint public temple to the triad of Ceres, Liber and Libera on Rome's Aventine Hill in around 496 BCE, which was fulfilled in 493 BCE. The Ludi Scaenici, or religious dramas, were held in honour of Liber for the Roman people. Liber was patron of the plebeians, Rome's largest and least powerful class of citizens, and as such is associated with particular forms of plebeian disobedience to the authority of Rome's republican patrician elite. The Ludi Scaenici often included satirical, subversive theatre within a lawful religious context. Liber also gave the right to ecstatic release, self-expression and free speech. He was a divine personification of liberty and inspired plebeian augury and wisdom. The Aventine Triad was a sort of parallel to the Capitoline Triad of Jupiter, Mars and Quirinus on the Capitoline Hill within the city's sacred boundary, and was both its copy and its antithesis. Although a god of wine, the wine produced under Liber's patronage was his gift to humankind, and it was for use for people in a non-religious context, and therefore it was fit for non-religious use but not for religious offerings. Libations offered to the gods in official cults had to be vinum inferum, a strong wine of pure vintage, known as tematum, made from the best of the crop under the patronage of Jupiter and ritually purified by his flamen, the senior priest. So Liber's role in viniculture and winemaking was therefore complementary to, but also subservient to, Jupiter's. Statues of Liber, Libera and Ceres were the centre of cult worship on the Aventine Hill, but these statues are now lost. Ceres, Liber and Libera were all associated with agriculture and fertility, and were deities associated with the plebeians as a social group. Liber was paired with Ceres and with Libera in separate fertility cults which were widespread throughout the Italian peninsula before their adoption by Rome. Each of the Aventine Triad's deities also had a cult in their own right. Libera became associated with Proserpina and was also worshipped in a joint cult with Ceres, similar to the cult of Demeter and Persephone in Greece. From around 205 BCE, the Ritus Graecus Cereris, a Romanised form of the Greek mysteries, was established honouring Libera and Ceres. Liber was associated with the civilizing of humanity. In his work The Fasti, Ovid connects Liber with Prometheus as the first to offer sacrifice to the gods and to teach the method of sacrifice to humanity, and with Aristaeus as the first to keep bees in hives for honey. And the story says that Liber was travelling with his retinue when he came across a swarm of bees. Liber gathered the swarm and shut it in a hollow tree and was rewarded with the discovering of honey. The Liberalia, or the festival of Liber, was celebrated on the 17th of March in the springtime, the time of awakening and renewal of life and fertility in the agricultural cycle. A portable shrine was carried through Rome, and the Securdas Liberi, the ivy-crowned priestesses of Liber, made special cakes, the Liber, of oil and honey, which they would sacrifice on behalf of devotees. The Liberalia also ritually celebrated the freedoms and rights around Roman ideas of virility as a divine and natural force. Young men in their 16th year celebrated their coming of age, and they cut off and dedicated their first facial hair to their household lares, the household gods, and would remove their childhood bulla praetexta, a locket which was given to them a few days after birth, and they would place it on the lararium with a lock of hair or the stubble of their first shave placed inside. If they were Roman citizens, they would now don the toga virilis of adulthood, which Ovid called a toga libera, or Liber's toga, or the toga of freedom. They would then go in a procession to the forum to register their citizenship, and they were then free to vote and could leave their father's domus, marry and raise a family. The ceremony processional featured a large phallus, which was carried throughout the countryside to bring the blessings and fertility to the land and the people and to protect the crops, and this was similar to the phallophoria festivals of the Dionysos in Greece. At the end of the procession, a wreath was placed upon the phallus by a virtuous and respected matron. The goddess Libera was also honoured, with Liber governing male fertility, while Libera governed female fertility. The Liberalia are described in several Latin sources, though Ovid's account was quite late at the end of the Republic, at a time when the Aventine Triad were no longer among the gods with a significant state cult, and the temple had been destroyed. Virgil, writing slightly earlier, describes a more rustic version of the Liberalia, involving the slaughtering of a goat, theatre performances, jumping on oily goatskins, and hanging masks on pine trees. All of these elements were also part of the cult practices of the Dionysos. Augustine said that the Liberalia lasted a full month in some places such as Lavinium and was characterised by licentiousness, mischievousness and the phallic procession. These licentious behaviours described by Virgil and Augustine are not described by Ovid, as Ovid was likely reinventing a more Roman Liber and Liberalia festival, more in line with the sensibility of the later civilised Romans during the late Republic and Empire. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like and subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching.